Okay. So this is family and friends coaching. And it's not about selling, unfortunately, and it's not about trying to get people to join our business opportunity. This is about community support and establishing a community that supports people without necessarily having a direct objective to get them to do something for us. So this is about supporting each other. And it is a call that's open to family, it's open to friends, it's open to our community of people who work together, because when people work together, they have common goals. And when we each assist each other to become the best that we can be, whether that's with our health, with our relationships, with our work, not only does we get better, our family gets better, our community gets better and stronger, and the world changes. Our culture and our society and our species is different just because you chose to become something more than you realized you were. And that's what friends and family coaching is about. It's about two key objectives: clarity and creativity. I call my coaching program Clarity and Creativity Coaching, because those are the two things we're going to be looking at over and over and over. We live in a world where we're mostly judged based on what we need or someone else needs or what they told us to do or we're telling ourselves to do. This is different. For the most part, people will not continue to do what they need to do or should do or someone told them to do any longer than they have to. It's just the way we are. And ironically, the more intelligent and creative you are and the stronger willed you are, the more you become the kind of person that the way you motivate us is by telling us we can't do it. And the way you shut us down is tell us we have to do it. And we've probably all experienced that. So my personal experience, for those who don't know me, 45 years ago, roughly, my father was diagnosed with terminal bone cancer and given just a few weeks to live, 3 to 6 weeks. We didn't have insurance. We were living in rural South Dakota. And the doctors basically gave him a prescription for unlimited morphine and sent him home to die. And my dad said he didn't want to die a drug addict. Find me something that works. Now, this is in the mid-70s. There's no internet. There's certainly no health food industry in the middle of South Dakota. In fact, we eventually found out that the nearest health food store was 400 miles away in Denver. And you certainly don't grow organic vegetables in the winter. But we did find a chiropractor, a holistic physician, who began to work with my dad on interventions just to help him with pain. That's all he cared about. It's a very painful disease. But along the way, in the interview with the doctor, he talked about his stress. He talked about his diet and other things. And, my dad did die. But that was 1.5 years ago in Santa Barbara, California. At the same time that he was sick, I was sick, having heart palpitations, having hallucinations, depression. And the doctors examined me from head to toe and said, "We're not sure what's wrong with you, but at the rate your body's deteriorating, you'll be dead in 3 to 5 years." I was 19. And we'd ask those doctors, "Do you think the chemicals my dad and I worked with," we were industrial spray painters, "might have something to do with our health?" "Oh no, that's out of your system after a few breaths of fresh air." Well, today, most of those chemicals are outlawed. And when I do a sauna, you can smell paint thinner, okay, after 45 years, all right? So medical schools didn't teach how to deal with that situation. They taught that it was hopeless. And so we began to work with persons like that chiropractor and eventually others, including the man who would become my mentor, and with what we now know was a multiple modality holistic approach to integrative medicine. Okay? And it saved my dad and it saved me. And then I was going to school on a disability to be a theoretical physicist. And I dropped out my senior years to become an associate with the doctors that were caring for my dad, and to learn naturopathic medicine and how to deal with serious chronic illnesses. So over the years, we did really well, and we had some of the best results that people have ever seen with terminal cancer patients, AIDS patients, and so forth. But there were people that were very resistant, people that did all the right things and still didn't get well, people who did all the right things and had a remission of symptoms, and then a few months later got sick again. And people who did all the right things, got better, and then died as if the doctor had told them to. Now, over 90% of our patients live longer and with a better quality of life than the doctors had told them. Okay, we had one stretch over a few years, we had 311 terminal patients. That's 1 in 1,000 chance of living for 6 months, and only 13 of them died during that 4-year period. That's pretty good, as well as working with thousands of other people. But being the way I am, and the way Dr. Rockwood and others are, we're always asking, what about the ones that got away? And so over the years, we began to realize there was more involved than just physical and nutritional medicine. And that brings us to the subject of tonight's call, which is clarity and creativity coaching, family and friends supporting each other to get clarity of vision and to create something different in our lives, whatever that might be. And so we found out, and we'll probably send out a short video to everybody in the next day or two, just a 2-3 minute video explaining the 4 reasons people get sick. And 3 of them, almost every doctor knows about. It's just the way we treat them. It's a little different from one profession to another. But the 3 things are toxicity. We've all heard of detoxing. Nutritional deficiencies. We know about those things too. And the 4th is physical trauma, whether it's a concussion or whether it's a sunburn or a sprained ankle. And so those things most doctors have a strategy for. They're taught protocols. We learn slightly different ones in different professions, but the thought processes are the same. The protocols follow a similar paradigm. And basically, you do detoxification, you do some type of deficiency support, and then you do physical therapy or chiropractic or something else to restructure the body. Now, what we discovered is that those things work really, really well. 90% of the time, they will fix whatever's wrong with you, with one caveat. Whatever you're dealing with, and it doesn't have to be just a health issue. It could be a relationship issue. It could be something to do with your job or your finances. If whatever you're dealing with has been in your life for less than 60 to 90 days, you can almost always resolve it with those 3 aspects of physical medicine. Almost always. And when modern medicine was developed 100, 150 years ago, most people were dying of acute infections and consequences of acute trauma. So that type of intervention has been very, very successful. But what do most people die of now? There's 4 major killers, 3 of them we commonly talk about, and the 4th one nobody wants to talk about. Okay. We all know about heart disease, right? Cardiovascular illness kills roughly half the population. Cancer, officially about 1/3 of the population, but the latest statistics show it's catching up. And about 50% of the population will have cancer before they die. Okay. And then the 3rd, which is the underpinning and also closely related to what we're working with, is diabetes. Just in the United States, 30 to 40 million diabetics, full-blown diabetics in a population of 300 million people? And yet we expect that number to double in the next 10 to 15 years. And we estimate that 90 to 120 million Americans are pre-diabetic and don't know it. That's 1/3 of the population. It's a severe crisis. And those 3 illnesses account for $1.7 trillion of the American economy. Just those 3. The 4th one, the one nobody wants to talk about, accounts for more deaths more life trauma, and more money than all the other three put together. And that's addiction and compulsive behavior disorders. And more people die from that, more marriages are destroyed, et cetera, than from all those other illnesses. So what we're seeing today is an epidemic of chronic health issues. And chronic health issues, chronic life issues, if you have money problems, it tends to go on for a while. If you have a relationship issue, it rarely lasts just a weekend. Okay? Anything that's been running in your life for more than 60 to 90 days, heaven forbid 3 to 6 months, actually creates a different neurophysiology in your body. And the three physical factors don't work very well. We're still trying to treat these illnesses with those factors. And it's like putting Band-Aids on an internal hemorrhage. It'll give you temporary relief, but how many people actually get well? How many people stay well? So in the process of researching what happens with those chronic illnesses, we found out something interesting. There was a fourth factor. And coincidentally, in the last 20 years or so, major medical research confirmed it. We now have literally dozens of studies from major universities and medical schools that say in 90% of cases of chronic health or life issues, there's only 2 reasons for causing it. What do you think those are? Only 2 reasons why people have cancer, why they have heart disease, why they have diabetes, why they get addicted. And the 2 reasons are your lifestyle choices and how you handle stress. Because the fourth factor is your reaction to emotional stress. It's not stress. One of the big misconceptions is that stress makes people sick. There's never been a medical study that can prove that X amount of stress makes Y amount of disease in everybody. If you apply a certain amount of stress to 1,000 people, you're going to get 1,000 different responses. Some people will laugh and keep going. Some people fall apart when you tell them about stress, and other people are all over the spectrum in between. It's not the stress that makes people sick. It's what you do with it. And that leads us to tonight's call. Because guess what? How many times have you been upset and somebody said, "Would you please calm down? You should be calmer." How did that work for you? You know, I don't like you being that stressed out. I don't think I want to deal with you. You should be a better person. You shouldn't feel like that. How did you feel the last time you had a strong emotion and someone you cared about said you shouldn't feel that way? You see? You can't tell people not to be stressed. In fact, we can't even tell ourselves. When you're looking at that hot fudge sundae and you know you really don't need to eat that today, but you go ahead and do it anyway. But I told myself not to. Or the third scotch, or getting angry at your family when you're overloaded. We tell ourselves, it's not like we don't know. So why don't we change? That's what clarity and creativity coaching is about. That's what friends and family is about. What does work? What will create change when you've been in a rut for more than that 3 to 6 months? For 5 years, for 10 years, for your whole life. A lot of our patterns start in childhood, and we've lived with them all that time. And just telling somebody to change it doesn't change it. One of the silliest things we ever came up with in fighting addiction was just say no. I mean, did anybody stop to think that addiction is in the part of the brain that can't understand words? You cannot talk to addiction. It doesn't work. Okay? So what does work? See? So we've got 4 causes, 4 reasons people have dysfunctions, whether they're health issues or whatever, and 2 reasons for the long-term ones: lifestyle choices and how do you handle stress? What do you do when you're under stress? So what do we have to do to change that? Well, the first thing we have to understand is what I just said. Can you tell yourself not to feel a certain way and it instantly works? Can you tell yourself not to eat the hot fudge sundae and it works? Maybe sometimes, but if you really, really want it, it doesn't work. Okay? So what does work? It's not the words. And that's where coaching comes in. There was a book written prior to the year 2000. I think it was called Health Trends 2000, Life in the 21st Century. Well worth reading, by the way. It's a product of a gentleman who works with a think tank, and every 10 years or so, they produce their information about what they think the future holds. One of the really fascinating things about that book was that they said that the primary form of communication in business and health was going to be from coaching. In fact, they intimated that coaching would be the dominant medical subspecialty over the next two or three decades. Why? Why not just teach doctors to tell people to do what they're supposed to do? Because of what we just said. Ask the doctors in the room, and we've got some really good ones, how often do you tell people the very best advice for what's going to improve their life? And they say, yeah, I'll do that. And how's that working for us? You see. Now, the ones who do listen, why? Why do some people listen and some don't, even though they both might need it? Because it's not about how much you need. It's not about what you were told, and it's not about what you told yourself. It's about what motivates you to change. And being told to do something is rarely the motivator. But guess what? Clarity of vision is. So what is it that you want? And how important is it to you? How do you feel when you focus on it? Because if we really, really want something, we'll go out and work for it. But just because somebody told us we had to, are we going to be internally motivated to follow through on it? No, of course not. So what do you want? And that leads us to our first friends and family call. Every call, we're going to be working with several phases, but we're going to have a little bit of a lecture, which will establish a base. Now, understand that learning information is not coaching. And in fact, I often tell people that there are 3 predisposing factors for the people who need this the most. So if you're taking notes, you want to take note of these and see how many of them fit you. Number 1, above average intelligence. The smarter you are, the more challenging it is for you to use words to change yourself or anybody else, believe it or not. Number 2, emotional sensitivity and creativity. And number 3, are you usually the stubbornest person in the room? In other words, strong will. People who are above average intelligence, above average creativity and sensitivity, above average willpower are the ones who are the most susceptible to these issues. And one of the reasons is we've been successful with those things. How did you get high grades at school? You could memorize answers or figure them out better than other people. Maybe you were a problem solver and problems were easy for you to figure out in your head. But guess what? When it comes to the way your body functions, when it comes to these chronic life issues like relationships, when it comes to health, long-term health, when it comes to how we deal with stress habitually, those things are not useful unless you know how to use them. Because again, just telling yourself not to do it doesn't work. Telling yourself to do it. How many of us know we should be exercising? We all know it. Is everybody doing it? How many times have you told yourself, well, this week I'm going to start doing more? Or this week I'll start my diet. How many of us have started a diet and then dumped it in 3 to 6 weeks? That's where these family and friends calls, the clarity and creativity coaching And the programs and tools that we're going to be showing you will begin to teach a different way. But again, teaching isn't coaching. Coaching is not being a doctor. I had to work for 10 years and spent a lot more money than people spend on medical school to learn how to be a decent coach, which is kind of sad because some people go to a weekend seminar and get to be a coach. And there are certification courses that just last a few months. And some of them aren't that bad, okay? But I spent years because I had to unlearn being a doctor to be a coach. They're two different skill sets. So basically, if you look at the three ways we transfer information, being a doctor is being an expert. And there's a time that you need an expert. The last time I tried to do brain surgery on myself, it got really messy and the results weren't all that good. There's a time when your car is broken, you want to take it to an auto mechanic. Okay? There's a time where an expert is exactly who you want to see. But in this world, there's only one expert on you, and that's you. So the expert can only go so far telling you how to be you. Okay? So being an expert who tells people what to do, or even does it for them, is not coaching. Even teaching, which we're doing right now and is a part of often to the coaching process, is not actual coaching. That's just it's again, being an expert who imparts information. Is that a good or bad? None of this is good or bad. It's not about judging. It's about, is it what's going to work to change our long-term behaviors? So coaching is not being the expert. Coaching is not who either does it, tells you what to do, or teaches you. So what is coaching? And here comes your definition. I'll be repeating it on almost every introductory call. Coaching is facilitating another person to ask better questions about themselves, to acquire more clarity about themselves, so that they can see other possibilities for themselves and make better choices for themselves and empower themselves to create a better life for themselves. Now, where in that definition did I say Dr. Janer is going to tell you what to do? Okay. There are two things you have to throw out the window when you're doing legitimate coaching, especially in this arena. Number one is there's no superiority of the one doing the coaching with the one who's getting coached. In fact, one of the basic principles of coaching is that we have to coach on a level playing field. So as a doctor, I have to know information you don't. I have to be able to do things you may not be able to do. And we're respected for that, and it's a valuable community service. But as a coach, I'm just another person just like you. And because we're on that level and we're interacting as family and friends, not as doctor-patient, we now have an opportunity to mutually support each other to ask better questions, get more clarity about ourselves, see more possibilities about ourselves, empower ourselves to do something about it. It's not about anyone else doing anything to you, which leads us to the second really remarkable principle of this type of coaching. When you go to a doctor or you go to the auto mechanic, what's the first question that we ask or they ask of us? What's wrong? What's wrong with you? What can I do to fix it? What are you going to do to fix me? Coaching starts in a different place. Coaching assumes from the very beginning that there's nothing wrong with you. You are a whole person. You know you better than anybody else knows you. And so the only person, because we all have free will and free choice, the only person who should be making those choices is you. And so me facilitating you so you can make better choices for yourself, or you can facilitate me mutually to make better choices for myself, that means we're on a level playing field here. And we're going to be using the same tools together. We'll be asking similar questions together, but the answers are going to be your answers, not mine. It's going to be your reasons to change, not mine. Okay. Now, if someone's a dependent, if they don't have life competence, maybe a Down syndrome child or a baby, that's a different situation. But again, coaching is not being a parent. That's a different type of contract. Now you have someone who has you have an implied obligation to care for that person and to provide them with support and guidance. But that's still not coaching. Coaching would be a little more like trying to talk to your 17-year-old. And they've long gone past the point where you can tell them what to do. But you might be able to say, well, I was 17 once, and this is how I dealt with it. Here's an option you might want to look at. But telling them don't go out and you have to be home by 11, well, let me show you. I'm grown up now, right? So even being a parent is different from coaching for the most part, although some of these things, of course, blend. So the first thing we do is we'll have some information so we have a basis, number one, to satisfy that mind that we love to use to figure things out. And so you can make it your first choice, which is whether or not this is something you're interested in. And for that, we like to have a little bit of information. We like to know, okay, does this make sense? Do I want to take that next step? Now, the reason that's so important is because what we're really looking for here for all of us is basically 3 areas of information. Now, we know what we know about ourselves and what we've learned. And so, but we also know that there's things there that we're not doing. So we may not know why we're not doing it, but we do know. We know we should exercise, we know we should eat right, etc. There's also things we know we don't know, and sometimes that's where a doctor or expert helps us. Like, I know I don't know how to fix a television set, and I don't know how to repair a car, unless it's just put more gas in it and some water. So in that case, we might go looking for more information. But when it comes to why am I not doing what I know I should be doing? If we knew it, we'd be doing it. Coaching will very quickly lead you, clarity and creativity coaching will lead you into what you don't know about yourself. Or at least you don't think you know it, because you do know. It's in there somewhere, but it's not in me. It's not in the doctor. It's not in the auto mechanic. It's in you. And so family and friends program is based on clarity and creativity coaching so that you can find out more about you and make your own choices about you and follow through on that choices as you choose. Clarity and creativity is about choice. Okay? All right, so we pretty much, that's about our 30 minutes. So now we're going to go ahead and I'll just give you we're at the end of these calls, we're going to talk about some background. I'm going to give you a tool, which we will build on from week to week. And it'll be a tool primarily to help us. Every one of these tools has multiple applications, and we don't have time to go into all of them. But so we're going to start with them, see how we react to them. There will be an exercise, and especially for those that want to do the full program, please do the exercises. I strongly recommend that you take notes. However, the best way to take the notes is when you re-listen to the program, because your first exercise is listen to this program at least once a day for the next 7 days. The research is clear that we really don't absorb information until we've been exposed to it 6 to 8 times, if not more. The other factor is, again, remember I said that part of your brain that where a lot of this exists doesn't hear words? Did you know that in communication theory, verbal communication is only about 5% words? That's why trying to convey a complicated topic in a text message or an email can be so challenging. It's why a dozen people can read a scripture from the Bible and you'll get a dozen explanations of what it means. Words are only 5%. 95% of it is not even in the neocortex of the brain. Okay, so every time you listen to one of these programs, you'll pick up part of that other 95%. Okay, So that's the first assignment, is listen to it once a day. The second assignment is at least the second or third time or whenever, but keep a notebook, keep a journal, and preferably not a digital journal, preferably one that you actually write. And there's a reason for that, which we'll probably get into later. You can always also either chat, text, or email questions that we can explore in the future, because these calls belong to the people on the calls. And everyone will be a little different based on questions and participation, because it's not really just about me lecturing, because guess what? Me lecturing is not coaching. Okay, but this is the first one, so we don't have a lot of choice, right? All right, so 3 aspects to the assignment. One is listen to the call once a day for a week. Okay, and number 2, I already forgot. See how the mind works? So listen to the call, and then the next one is, what do I want? Okay, if we're not going to listen to what we're told to do, even by ourselves, then we better figure out why we want to do things or how important they are to us. And that's where the clarity of vision comes in. If you have something you really, really want, you will do it. So the first step, it's a 3-step process, but this week we're only going to work with one of them, because this particular one expands your creative potential and allows you to do more later on in the program. So what you're going to do is take your notebook, clean sheet of paper, and you're going to write down everything that you want from life. You're just going to make this humongous list. Ironically, most people, when they first do it, they don't get very far. But you're going to do it every day or several times a day for the next week. You just start writing, what do I want? Now, this might be a hint that might help, is if you had perfect health and $100 million a year tax-free, what would you be doing with it? So there's no limits here. We're not looking at, well, I think I can manage to do this. No, this first part is, what do I want? If there were no limitations, I'd want to do this, I'd want to do that, I'd build schools, I'd go to the moon. What do you want? And just allow your creativity to go to its full potential and make a list of everything you want. And with each item, look at it for a moment and ask yourself, how much do I really want that? And you can kind of put 1 to 3 stars if you want. I want this, I really want this, I really, really want this, okay? Or just make the list, it doesn't matter. This first part is just about giving yourself the freedom to explore everything inside of you that you would like to do, that you would choose to do, if you had the opportunity to do it. So what do I want? All right? Listen to the call, and what do I want? And then we're going to use our first tool. Okay, well, I need to ask a question now of everyone on the call. Is there anyone on the call who's not breathing? If you're not breathing, I need to refer you to another program. All right, everybody breathing? We're all right on that? Good. All right, so here's your first tool. Could you pause for a moment and notice that you're breathing?
What?
Everybody past the first part? Good. And consciously change your breathing. And we all know from everything from meditation to yoga classes that deep, slow breathing helps you relax. And I'm going to teach you a deep, slow breathing technique, but I'm not teaching it to you just because it helps you relax. There's actually about 3 or 4 reasons why I use this particular one. And we'll talk about that another time. But the number 1 reason why I use this particular one is because it's so stinking simple, even I can remember it. Okay? So step 1, notice that you're breathing. Okay? Then take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Got it? I know it's complicated, but let's do it again. Step 1, just notice that you're breathing. Are you breathing? Yep. All right. Then I choose to take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Yeah. If you want to get fancy schmancy, you can breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, but it really doesn't matter for this. The most important part of this particular exercise is just to notice that you're breathing. Okay? We'll expand on it over the course of the 4 to 6 weeks of these calls until we have a whole system of managing internal stress and making better choices and decisions and acquiring greater clarity of vision, all built on that breath pattern. If that sounds interesting to you, come back and join us next week. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a rest of the night. Make it super fantastic and breathe, right, Dr. Ron? Slowly.
That's right. Notice your breathing. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Talk to you later. Bye, guys.